So early this morning I got my hands on the 41 Fingers Song Kit number 1. I was very excited, and so I created my own musical idea from it. So it goes something like this. Little bass. I add in a little bit of drums. Some soft piano. Some pizzicato string. Some sustained strings. Some lead guitar. Some more piano. More strings and some horn. And then some lead piano. So in the next segment I'm going to tell you how I put this together and how you can get your own version of this song kit to come up with your own ideas. So, okay, what is a song kit and how is it made? Well, as anybody who's watched the channel knows, I like to create my own chord progressions on the piano. So I'll spend hours just going through. I'll pick a key in scalar, and then I'll just go through playing live on the keyboard. And so for this one I started with A major and just came up with these 8 chord progression here. So from there I transfer or record that into Cubase. And those 8 chords become my master MIDI notes that then I create my other chords from. Alright, so once the notes are transferred into Cubase, we have the very large and complex chords here. And if we listen to them, so we have a lot of information in just these chords. We have bass ideas down here with these root notes, and we have triads hidden in here, which we'll get into next. And we have the ability to then throw this all into scalar, but let's take a look at how that would be done. So in the next track, if we drag this down and look at our bass triads, extracted from the complex chords. And get on the right track here. So these triads are very useful because Sonokinetic needs a simpler chord, and that's why we can now use this with Sonokinetic's products. And also, if you just wanted to create like a melody for a piano, you could throw this into Ezkeys, and then Ezkeys could create a melody above that using these chords. So that's why you want to for sure have simple chords and complex chords. And then the final track that I will create for a song kit would be just the bass root notes. And you guessed it, these are just the last notes of the complex chords, which will be used for any bass VST like Ujam, Easy Bass, which you can throw this into there, that VST, and it will create a more complex bass line over these chords. So it's a very simple way to get bass ideas. Also, you could just throw a cello or a double bass on this line and have it give you more bottom end for your melody above it. And so it's also a really great idea to have your single bass notes on a separate track. So next we're going to look at some live play, and then we'll get into how we can throw this all into scalar for the next bit. Alright, for the last two tracks of the song kit, I'll usually throw in some live play from those 8 chords. So it'll just be a very human timing, and just to give some more ideas, to throw some more MIDI up there for melody ideas. So this is my first track played live. Alright, and then the last one will be, just move this one back down, and this one up here. And this is the same deal, played live, just to give a human kind of, to give some more melody ideas from these 8 chords. Alright, so that'll be the 5 tracks, and usually that's enough to really give a person all the base material you need to then go to the next stage, which would be to throw it into the extended chords into scalar, and then come up with all these yellow tracks, and that's what we'll do next. So once we have all our original song kit tracks of MIDI up here, and that would be 1 to 5, we can very easily bring that into scalar. We have a default scalar here set to detect. I take my extended full chord MIDI and drag it into there. Scalar will look at it, tell us exactly what they are: A major, C sharp minor, D major, E major, and so forth. And then we just lasso these, drag them down into the performance area, and now we're ready to let scalar give us all kinds of great performances, rhythms, melodies, bass lines, anything we need from our original complex chords. So that would be the next step, which will give us all these yellow tracks here. So all these tracks in yellow were recorded and dragged from scalar into the DAW. And so that's a very important little step here, because after you do that, and I've recorded some rhythm, some melodies, 4 performances, then once you have all this MIDI up here, including the gray tracks and your yellow tracks, when you go to your VSTs, and that would be Ujam bass, That might be the Orchestra Complete 2 strings, Scalar itself, the soft piano from Scalar, some Pizzicato from the Orchestra Complete 2 again, Band in a Box guitar, Sonokinetic Indie, Ezkeys piano, Superior drummer, bass, drums, and then a Scalar lead piano using the Noir VST. So you're using the root MIDI. You drag that original extended chords into Scalar, and now Scalar has the chords and can produce any kind of performance you may want and need for any type of VST. So now in the next section, we're going to look at all these different VSTs and see what type of MIDI they need and how it was utilized. Alright, so now for the fun part, where since we have all these MIDI tracks up here with all the different types of MIDI, we just have to assign the right type of MIDI to any type of interesting VST that we want to. And for the first track, we'll check out the Ujam bass, which is sounding great, so we'll use that. We have it set up to play a little rhythmic bit of rhythm here, so it has a little style phrase set up, and we'll play it. Now what it's going to play is just the simple, if I zoom this up here, it's just the simple bass notes that we extracted from up here. So the original bass note MIDI up here was dragged down to mellow bass right here and gives us instantly a nice little bass line to play. And since it's our first track, we could easily change up mellow bass, and we could take it in any type of direction by changing the sound of the bass here or the rhythm it's playing. So if we hit a new preset, now we get a walking type of bass with a more maybe jazzy type of laid back, and we hit another one, we get some rock and roll ideas, and now our song could go in a totally different direction if we wanted to at this point. We could change up the beats per minute, we could change it back to 4/4 time, we could do anything we want at this point. So let's switch it back though, let's stay focused. We'll keep it to our original idea, and that's our first track, the bass. Very simple to set up because we had the MIDI already done. Alright, let's go to our next track here, and we're going to look at the string sustain, and that will be with the Orchestra Complete 2, and we'll look at that next. So for this track, again, very simple. We need some sustained chords, and we have them in the extended full chords that we started with, and they're complex. They'll fill up this entire keyboard, which the Orchestra Complete will make good use of. We have 4 instruments. We have 1 violin, we have a viola, and we have a cello. There's no rhythm being played. It's just going to play a color inside of the orchestra, so the rhythm is coming from these chords, these complex chords that it's going to play. And since these notes are long notes, they're good for sustain, and that's what we have our instruments set up to as an articulation for our violin, viola, and our cello. So that's all set up ready to go, and we could play that with the bass if we turn it on. So we instantly now have some background string sustains, giving us a nice kind of airy string background. And we could so easily change it up by just, I've talked about the orchestra. There's so many things you can change in here alone just by going to the hundreds of presets. We could instantly take this in a different direction. But We're going to stay focused. We could, just for fun, turn back on the second violin. We could add in the double bass, and now our strings sustains are a little thicker, a little more interesting. But since we have a lot of bass tracks coming up, in this case I'm going to turn off the double bass here and turn off the violin here just to keep it a little thinner because we have more tracks to come. So again, this was created very simply by dragging down the full bass chord, or the full extended chords, and we just dragged it down to this track here for the orchestra sustained strings. The next track will be a soft piano by Scalar. Alright, now for the next track we have soft piano, which is literally just Scalar's sound. So I'm actually using the sound inside Scalar for a soft piano sound. I'm not using any performance from Scalar, but what we are using are the bass triad chords dragged down from up here again in the gray up here, dragged it down to this track just to give us some soft piano played by Scalar's sounds. And we can listen to that. I'll turn it up a little extra loud so you can hear it. And because it's a Scalar, we could so easily turn on a performance. Maybe we'll leave that performance on. Alright, so that's our soft piano track. And so the next one will be the pizzicatos. Alright, now for this track we have the orchestra complete with pizzicatos, a full string pizzicato. Again, no movement, no rhythm coming from the orchestra. The rhythm is coming from, in this case, one of the yellow tracks that were generated from original chords and one of the rhythm tracks. So I dragged down the rhythm track here down to this track for the pizzicato, and that's where the rhythm is coming from. And the sound is pizzicato from the orchestra. So let's listen to that. Now, again, so easily we could, if we turn down the piano in the last track, where things don't get too busy, again, we could so easily go to these pizzicatos and switch it from a color to a rhythm, and the pizzicatos themselves could have an additional rhythm. And I don't know how this will sound, but now we're going to have rhythm from the MIDI and rhythm from the orchestra itself. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's do an experiment. Now that is strings, but we want it to be pizzicatos. Let's see if we can get a rhythm with just pizzicatos. I think there is somewhere in here, but I'm not going to take the time to look. But you can see how, you know, every track that has a VST with its built-in rhythm, you could, you know, add that on top of the MIDI rhythm that's already on the track. And if it's too busy, you could go back to just a color, and we can go back to that pizzicato. And in this case, I think we'll just stick with the rhythm that was generated on the track from Scalar, one of these rhythm tracks up here. Alright, next track up will be a band in the box guitar. Alright, the next track is the band in the box acoustic guitar. Beautiful sounding in this case, really worked out well, was easy to do. Because it's a WAV file, we don't need any of our MIDI ideas up here in the gray or yellow. We simply need the chords from our original 8 chords. So I simply put those, because if we look at scalar, remember when we dragged our original complex chords in, it told us exactly what the chords were, gave the names to them, and those names went up here to Cubase's chord track. There's the 8 chords up there, and since everything makes sense now, with all you need really is the chords, the tempo, time signature, and once you have that type of information, you can use band in a box, and I input the A there, the C sharp minor, the D, the E, the A, and so forth. So I put that into band in a box, and then had band in a box generate. So I selected a real track, and I picked, it could have been anything. Again, it could have been acoustic guitar, saxophone, trumpet, banjo, whatever, something appropriate. And it generated that with the correct chords and with the correct tempo. And once that was generated as a WAV file, dragged in, and now we have our guitar. So let's play that. I'll just hear it a little clearer. Alright, so that's sounding really nice. And remember, when we started with this bass up here, we could have went to that rock and roll type of rhythm with the bass, and we could have stuck with that theme, and then when we were picking this guitar, I could have dragged a rock and roll lead guitar or something with some distortion, and so it could have ended up being a rock and roll tune, or a jazz tune, or a blues tune. The key here is once you have the basic fundamental building blocks for your song idea, you can take it down any pathway you want. So that's our beautiful little acoustic guitar. The next track is going to be a Sonokinetic one. Alright, so our next track is the Sonokinetic Indie, which we simply drag down the bass triads here because it needs simple chords. So we have that already set up. So we drag that down to our Sonokinetic track, and you see our bass chords here. And that Sonokinetic will understand. And but since it's the Sonokinetic phrase library, there's a couple other considerations. So we have our chords set up, and they will play Sonokinetic's phrases. But we also have to set up, because I have 2 phrases stacked on top of each other, I turn on the magic key here, which I've talked about. So if you press down that key and with velocity turn on phrase linking, when this second phrase plays, it will play in a more musical way on top of the first phrase. So we have the right chords, we have 2 phrases set up, and if we look at the MIDI, we can see our controller. We have to go to make sure we're on the right track here. So we go to our Sonokinetic Indie, and so we can see our triads, but we can also see the 2 controller. These are the notes that were dragged across the entire performance that we're going to play. So that means this first phrase, which is this one over here, that will play through the entire little song we got going here, demo. And then about halfway through, or at this point right here, where this chord starts, this will play. The second phrase will play on top of it. Some horns. So that'll be an extra little, just some brass on top of our strings. So that's the way you want to set it up. Make sure you have phrase linking on, because there's 2 phrases on top of each other. make sure you have triads, which we do, and that was already pre-done for us. You may have to drag out the triad a little bit over and do a little legato trick to have them blend in a little nicer. It depends on the phrase. But in this case, we just dragged a couple notes over. And then your control notes up here. Simple as that. So 3 things to remember. Turn on phrase linking, make sure you have your proper triads, and you have your notes set up. And now we can listen to it in the context of our demo. So let's play it with what we have so far. So if we turn on some guitar with that. So you may decide that that's getting too busy already. That's totally up to you. You could turn the guitar off and just go with the piano for a lead. But bringing in the Sonokinetic idea is very powerful now, because just like with all the other VSTs we're talking about, with the orchestra and with Scalar and with Ujam, I could go to any one of many different categories. I could bring in some woodwinds, some melodic percussion, some very nice string quartet ideas. You could take this in another direction from here. So that's why you want to take the time and effort to be able to bring Sonokinetic's engines into your ideas. They bring so many possibilities you normally wouldn't have. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. And for our next track, we've got Ezkeys. Now this is going to be kind of a rhythmic chord idea in the background using Ezkeys. All right, so now we have Ezkeys available, and what Ezkeys would need would be just their straight triads, which we have again up here. So if we select that MIDI, and these are just the triad chords, we can drag it into Ezkeys, and that's what I did, and just select import. And now our chord progression, the basic triad, is inside of Ezkeys, and that's what I started with. And then I went to the browser, and I forget what I chose. I think something in let's see, what was it, rock ballads or songwriter, and I think it was straight 4/4, but you can convert it to 6/8. I wouldn't worry about the 6/8 too much. If you have some issues, just switch back your DAW to 4/4, create the MIDI, drag it into the DAW, and then switch your DAW back to 6/8, and it should convert it nicely. In fact, I think that's what I did with Band in the Box. I rendered the Band in the Box guitar at 4/4 signature, dragged it in, the WAV file, into Cubase, and then once it was there, switched Cubase back to 6/8, and that WAV file just magically and musically was stretched to fit nicely. So there's ways around everything. So here we have our Ezkeys, but I wanted to spice it up, so I added some extra, and I forget which one it was, but I wanted more notes than just the original chords. So the chords are here. I selected Use Browser MIDI, which added these beautiful verse chord or notes onto the chords, and then I replaced it, which means now I can drag this into the DAW, and that's exactly what I did. I dragged it right to the easy chord track, and these are the notes that I used. So let's move this out of the way. Very, very simple process. and that's what we have now with our Ezkeys. Let's play that. Oh, and if you're wondering why it doesn't sound quite right, it's because remember, with your VSTs, you don't want to have two MIDIs playing at once. So if you do drag something in like I did here, make sure to select this and say remove. And so what you were hearing is a double of that MIDI. So now we can move this out of the way and we can hear it proper this time from the beginning. So now we have that nice Ezkeys piano line. And at any time, we could, you know, select all this MIDI, drag it out, make a chorus, verse, you know, get 100 bars of music going, and then we could simply switch lead from these Ezkeys to the guitar. At the right time, right? Or play both at the same time. So next we could just, I'm not going to spend much time on Superior Drummer and the drums, but let's take a look at what we did here. We've got Superior Drummer, and very quickly I just went in and said, well, what is this? What type of music? I think I ended up with some kind of ballad from Music City, whatever. It just literally minutes, picked something, dragged it into the DAW, something appropriate, and that's how I got the MIDI for the drums. And you could use the Philips jazz kit I was talking about the other day, which would have been another beautiful option. Any jazz kit that you have, some brushes for this particular demo would work. So that's that, and let's turn that on from the beginning. Turn the guitar off. So now we have a nice little beat in the background with some brush drums. And I would also say that in the beginning, if we did go a rocky route with the bass, some rock and roll type of rhythms there, again with the Superior Drummer, we could have just went with something from the rock songs group, and that would have, you can see how powerful this is when you have so many things to choose from. So it all starts and is hinged and rooted in the original chords, the bass notes, the extended full chords. Then we got into creating more MIDI on top of that with some performance ideas, some rhythms, some extra melodies. And a lot of this, we never even got into these ideas here. We picked one rhythm. We could have went into some scalar melodies. The options you have are just so unlimited. It's really something. So now for our last track, it's going to be a lead piano from the Noir VST, but the rhythm is going to come from scalar. So we'll do that next. All right, so for the final track, we don't even need MIDI. As you see here on the track, there's no MIDI, and that's because it's a scalar track with performance turned on, and it already has the chords down here at the performance section, and this button here is synced to the DAW. So when we play it now, it's all going to sync up, and we don't even need to have MIDI on that track, and we'll be able to, because it's a melody, we can go in and switch many different choices here to pick from on the fly if we want. So let's play that with this lead piano from Scalar. Add some guitar. Change it up, bring in some more strings. Alright, so there you have it. A couple final thoughts. If this is way too busy for you, it'd be so easy to just bring in certain tracks at certain places in your song so that you would have certain instruments playing, others not. So you would have strings come in while piano leaves. Then you could have the guitars come in to replace your pianos. It'd be very simple to mix this. And of course you also want to pan for your basic mixing. You want to have instruments come in and out at the right time. You want to pan them a little bit left, a little bit right, which would be appropriate for your band. And then you have the beginning of a nice song demo. So in the final segment, we'll wrap it up. So to wrap it all up, I think it's a great idea because I've been making a lot of videos and I have a lot of different musical ideas, and you know, sometimes people would like to demo them and try them out for themselves. So this will be a great way to label it correctly so you can match the video with the song kit, which will be on Patreon. So, and that zip file will be named correctly. So in this case, it would be song kit number 1, followed by what key it's in, the tempo, time signature, and so you'd know what to set your DAW up for. And it should come with 4 or 5, maybe 6 tracks of MIDI. You'll get your bass notes, your extended full chords, your bass triads, and some live play for musical ideas, which I just get from the keyboard. And so I think it'll be a real fun way to watch a video, but then to go to Patreon, just download one zip file, which will be MIDI files, so very fast and easy to do. You'll drag that one MIDI file into your DAW, and you'll end up with 5 tracks, in this case, these gray tracks right here. And that will give you what you need to go directly into like a scalar or directly into a VST and come up with millions of variations from those original chords. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you take advantage of that. And also joining Patreon is a great way to say thanks. It's only like $5 to join. You support the channel. You're going to get some great musical ideas and unique original chords that oftentimes I spent hours or half a day just going through different scales, coming up with chords that work well together. So you'll have some unique original chords to work with and some great tools to expand upon them. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.